The Beast in the Fog by Isaac Travers. It was a quiet morning on the highway. The only sound was the low murmur of wind drifting lazily across the open road. A thin blanket of fog clung at the asphalt, stretching endlessly ahead of a pale, shifting veil. A car cut through the mist, its headlights barely piercing at the gloom. Inside sat a young man named Kai and his girlfriend, Tracy. They were on their way to Kai's coastal house, which was a 2-hour drive from his home in the suburbs of Canberra. Kai kept his eyes fixed on the road, his hands steady on the wheel, while Tracy slept beside him, her head resting gently against the wind for a while. Everything felt still, almost too still. Then Tracy stirred. Her eyes opened, slowly, blinking against the dim grey light. At first, she said nothing, but there was a tension in her expression. A quiet unease she couldn't quite place. "Kai," Tracy murmured, her voice somewhat groggy. "I think we should stop." Kai frowned slightly, glancing at her before returning his attention to the road. "We're fine. Probably it's just the fog messing with you." But Tracy didn't respond. She was staring out through the windshield, her gaze fixed on something ahead, or perhaps something above. And that was when Kai heard it. It was a low, resonant sound that rolled through the air. Not quite a growl, not quite thunder, but something deeper. It vibrated through the car. It was subtle at first, but then unmistakable. It was a kind of sound that didn't just reach your ears, but settled into your chest. Kai's hands gripped the wheel tightly. "What was that?" he muttered to himself. The sound came again. This time, it was louder. A drawn-out, guttural roar that seemed to ripple through the fog itself. Tracy leaned forward, her breath catching up with her. "Kai, look!" At first, he didn't see it. Then the fog above them shifted. Something vast was moving within. Something that blocked out what little light filtered through the sky. It was a shadow, but not a formless one. It had a shape, mass, intention. For a fleeting moment, the mist parted just enough to see a wing, almost as similar as a bat. It was enormous and unnatural. It stretched across the sky like a living storm cloud, its edges jagged and stinted as though the fog itself clung to it. It moved slowly and deliberately, far too controlled to be anything ordinary. Kai's heart began to pound. That's not possible," he whispered. The creature, if it was a creature, circled above them. Its presence felt more than seen. The air grew heavier, as if the world itself were holding on to its breath. Tracy's voice trembled. It looks like it's following us." Another roar tore through the silence. This time, it was much closer. The fog then thickened again, swallowing the shaped whole, but the sense of it remained. It was waiting, and it was watching. Without any hesitation, Kai slammed his foot down on the accelerator, and the car lurched forward. The tires hissed against the damp road as it surged through the fog. For a moment it felt like they were outrunning the strange creature as it roared through the entire road of existence, and yet soon it faded. Kai let out a shaky breath. "See? It's gone." Yet Tracy didn't answer. She was staring out the rear window. "Kai!" she whispered. A thunderous crack split through the air behind them. Then another, and another. Kai glanced at the mirror and felt his stomach drop. Massive indentations were slamming onto the concrete, one after another, each impact shattering the surface of the glass. The shapes were enormous, claw-like, yet almost like the footprints of a prehistoric beast. Each one punched slightly through the ground, sending chunks of asphalt flying into the air. And then they were getting closer. "It's still there," Tracy said, her voice trembling. It looks like it's running." Kai swore under his breath and gripped the reel tighter. "Hold on!" He swerved sharply, veering off the highway into a narrow dirt track to cut through an open field. The car bounced violently as it left the road. Its tires struggled to grip against the uneven ground, and then eventually it crashed, flipped onto its side completely. Abruptly, there was silence. For a moment, neither of them moved. Kai groaned, almost dazed as his head kept spinning. "Tracy, are you okay?" A weak cough answered him. I think so." One thing was for sure. They were alive. Yet the fog continued to lazily drift across the fields, as if nothing had happened. Kai let out a breath of relief, and then another sound was heard. It was not a roar this time, but of a slow and heavy breathing. Tracy's eyes widened. "Kai, don't move." The ground shifted slightly beside the car. A shadow fell across them, or remained of the windshield. Then came a sound of something piercing into the metal above them. A sharp crack. Something pierced through the roof, for it was long and jagged like a spike. Another slammed down beside them, punching through with terrifying ease, tearing through the frame as if it were paper. A third drove straight through into Kai. He didn't even have the time to scream, for the spike pinned him where he sat, the force of it crushing the breath from his body instantly. Blood spread across his shirt, and his eyes went wide in shock, then dimmed just as quickly. "Kai!" Tracy shrieked. The spikes withdrew slowly, dragging twisted metal with them. Outside the car, the beast's breathing continued. It knew that its prey was still alive. With fear in her heart, Tracy ran. Her boots tore through the wet grass as she fled across the open field. Her breath ragged, lungs burning with every desperate step. Behind her, the ground was still trembling from the slow, heavy impacts that told her the beast was still coming for her. Tracy then spotted a line of trees emerging through the thinning fog. It was unmistakably a forest. She didn't hesitate to push harder, forcing her aching body towards the forest until she crossed into the tree line of branches that crawled at her arms. As Tracy made her way into the tree lines and between the trunks, the air felt different there, much more thicker and more tangled. She ducked behind a large tree, pressing herself against it. Tracy used her hand to cover her mouth to silence her breathing. As the footsteps reached the edge of the forest, and then it stopped. For a moment, there was nothing. No movement, and no sound. Tracy dared to glance around the side of the trunk, and saw it. Not clearly, not fully, but enough to work out an image in her head. It was a towering shape that loomed beyond the trees, its form distorted by the fog. 3 long necks twisted slowly above a massive body, each ending with a head lined with jagged tusks that curved outward like unbroken ivory. They moved indefinitely, sniffing and searching with their motions unnatural and wrong. Its body stood impossibly tall, easy 30 feet or more. But what held Stacy's gaze were its legs. It had 2 enormous pillar-like feet pressed into the earth, and a third leg dragged behind it, completely useless, as if it were a man on crutches, as it left a deep scar in the ground as it moved. Tracy froze. For a quick second, the middle head tilted slightly at Tracy, as if it were listening, Then suddenly, it lunged. Just as the beast was willing to strike, Tracy shut her eyes and screamed for dear life. But then came nothing. There was no impact, no roar, and no crushing force, but silence. Slowly, trembling. But there was nothingness. Tracy then opened her eyes, for the forest was still, and the fog was lifting. Shafts of pale morning light broke through the trees as the mist thinned, peeling away from the ground, dissolving into nothing. The weight in the air vanished, and the presence of the beast was gone, with no explanation. Tracy staggered back, her mind reeling from what she had witnessed. The trees at the forest edge stood broken, the earth torn where something had moved. But there was nothing there now, leaving not even a footprint in plain sight. Tracy started thinking about what she had witnessed. Was it? But then the question died in her throat, because she knew the answer. Kai was dead, and whatever killed him had to be real. Though Tracy didn't stay for long, and so she ran back through the field, back to the road, away from the forest, away from the fog that still clung in the thin wisps in the distance. After what felt like an hour or so, she reached the highway and made her way to a lone telephone booth that was standing on the roadside. With shaking hands, Tracy stepped inside to make a call. Her voice was barely steady as she had asked for help for anyone to come and take her into town. She didn't tell them what happened. They wouldn't believe her. Maybe she didn't want them to. But as she stood there, staring at the last remains of the fog drifting across an empty sky, one thought refused to leave her mind. Whatever was out there, it hadn't followed her at all. It might have stayed behind, waiting for her to come back. So if you ever find yourself driving through the foggy roads, or even if you see terrifying mist, it's better that you keep moving, because something might be watching you.